Hi, I'd like to welcome you again to the Boffomundo show, which, by the way, has now a new look and a new name. We're now called the All Ears Boffomundo show. You can see our new little sign over here. We'd like to thank Mr. Tony Harrington, who's president of All Ears Records, number one.
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much for appearing on our show today.
Thank you for calling me.
Well, you're welcome. We're glad to have you. I'd like to start off the questioning. The early and mid-'70s in Italy seemed to have a great deal of progressive bands. Progressive music seemed very, very prominent at that time. Could you describe to us a little bit about that scene and how it has evolved into the current scene today?
Okay. Basically, there was a big change between the music of the 60s and the music of the 70s in Italy. Mm-hmm. And people would go and hunt for those records, mostly British bands coming out, and would hunt in record shops, mostly imported. And so bands like Genesis and Gentle Giant were known a lot in Italy before they ever made it in their own country. I remember Gentle Giant going around and buying cassettes in Italy because they even have cassettes out in England.
Really?
Okay. Uh-huh. And the progressive scene, what did to Italy was to bring out musicians from Italy to start to do their own music, with a lot of influences naturally, but for the first time in 1970, two groups like Leorma and PFM came out with their original material. Never happened before. Record companies would never let groups record their own music or arrange their own music.
You're kidding? Why not? What was the reason?
Because they thought they were not good enough. So what every band in the 60s in Italy would do what is called cover, which is using like an American or English song and just changing the lyrics to it and sing it with the arrangement very similar to the original one. Mm-hmm. And so the 70s was a really big change, like writers, new writers and new arrangers, because groups were doing all this work. And what was most amazing was like PFM went number one. It was the first group ever to go number one in Italy. Probably so far it's the last.
Was it a single or an album that went to number one?
Both, right.
Amazing.
And so from that, a lot of bands started out working, and why they picked up more on British bands than American bands, I have a theory about it. Okay, mm-hmm. that I'm going to tell about.
Okay,
like coming out of a dark age, as I can tell from Italy, because music was real bad, like very middle of the road, very old-fashioned type. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have any concerts anywhere, so we couldn't really see the people playing. We couldn't see the old bluesman player playing. We couldn't see the new drummer playing. We couldn't see the new singers performing. And so musicians in Italy had to get closer to music, had to listen to records and study the records, okay, and reading all the album cover notes. Mm-hmm. And listening to the albums. And I think the British bands rely a lot on technique more than feeling. And so for somebody who wants to learn technique, the bands coming out of England offer more. Why in America is very based on the feeling and on the actually, playing very relaxed, not a very built and square thing.
In other words, from America, it's more from the soul. It's the gut feeling instead of the technique, the chops.
But in here, in America, you're very lucky because the young kids can see the other musicians playing, so you pick it up right away. Right. Like I remember Aquafragile had to go and buy the Woodstock album and listen to it many times to understand the tuning of the guitars, because no one knew that you could tune your guitar a different way, like open tuning. Mm-hmm. Okay, so on the album, I think it's like Stefan Stills talking and somebody in the back is tuning up. So we picked up that, hey, that's how they do it,
I see.
So it sounds like very, very school, very elementary school, but that's what it was.
Are you saying that there was and is nowhere in Italy to see music? You're saying that there was no way for you to see.
Right. The only concerts were those guys playing those covers numbers, and they were not doing a good job.
Was it a concert like where you pay to go in and you sit down in a seat, or was it like a dance or a party or something?
Okay, well, it was mostly a dance floor type thing, where a band would have maybe 45 minutes to have their show, and all the rest was slow numbers or fast numbers. Okay, so beside the Beatles and the Rolling Stones came to Italy, the very first concert they had in Italy was by the end of 1970, I think, or beginning 1971 with Jethro Tull. And that all started the whole thing. Like Jethro Tull came to Italy, and everybody started buying flutes.
Jumping around and standing on one foot. Yeah.
So now what has happened is that progressive music in Italy is no more. This is due to various facts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one is that disco took over very strongly, and second is that some like a political type of thing that killed the concert situation.
It sounds to me like it was never alive to be killed.
Well, it started, but see, this is very difficult to explain. In Italy, like the political situation, mostly leftish and very out there. It came out of the idea that rock music or progressive music is the music of the masses, and shouldn't be paid for it. I mean, musicians should play free. Okay.
How are they expected to live?
Right. That's why there's no more bands in Italy. Only three.
I see. They couldn't survive. They weren't earning a living.
Because they were saying, "Oh, you make a lot of money with records, so you should play your concert live." But the the Italian market is very small. It's like 40 times smaller than America, and there's a lot of competition with other, bad music, and so everything went down. A third fact was that musicians kept on wanting to get better and more progressive, and so they kind of got away from the audience. Like if somebody would start playing Genesis and doing that classical type of thing, then later on would get into rock jazz, and then later on would get into research, and by this time people won't listen to strange sounds like this is research music, this contemporary. But people go to buy disco because they have more fun. So somehow, I think this is.
It was interesting when I first got into progressive music. Italy was the first country that I found outside of England where there was dozens and dozens of albums by dozens and dozens of bands.
Right.
Now, how did they get to sign with record labels, and why did it get so predominant and then sink?
So prolific, yeah.
All right. See, the record companies never allowed bands to work on their own material, as I said before. And the first 3 bands that did it, made it. So record companies just changed their policy right away, and they were signing everybody. Also because the band was very cheap to work with, because they were playing all their own stuff. They were bringing all their own equipment in studio, so it was much easier to sign a band, a progressive band, than signing a solo artist. In fact, in that time, all the solo singers, performers in Italy went all down. All bands were up, okay? Because you could, like for Aquafragile, the band I used to be in, the album was very cheap for the record company because we would play in it. They didn't have to hire any musicians. We wouldn't get any money for it. That's why they all got into it, and they blew it because there were so many bands, so many records and albums.
They signed
everybody
way
did.
Too many, and it just sort of got too heavy, went over like a balloon.
Yes.
You mentioned that it was the politics of Italy that seemed to stifle the creativity of musicians. They couldn't play their own music and so on. When they did begin to play original music, was there politics in the music itself? In other words, were the musicians of a political nature? Were they doing political songs? And
well, I'm talking about politics. I'm talking mostly about parties or organization out of what we parliament. I mean, very leftish and very small organization, but very strong in the big cities, like Milan or Rome or Turin or Bologna. Okay, this is very difficult, to explain.
I'm sure our audience is interested.
But okay, like they found out that a lot of young people would go to concerts. They would gather together, okay, to see these bands. So they used this type of thing to reach with ideas the young generation. Mm-hmm. And I can tell, because I've been in it, musicians believe that we were going to change something. Like, we play for those concerts, we play for free. Hey, man, it's going to be great because we're going to build up a new world. It's like after Woodstock, after 1968, a new seeds plant, in the earth, and it would come out new plants. But it didn't work out because the political organization were not interested in music. They don't like music. Or what they're interested is in getting the people. So even inside of them grew even stronger violence people. There's like what we call autonomy. Autonomy. They don't want any political organization. They just want to be on their own. Very anarchy type. Anarchy. Okay, but so like they would gather together at concerts, and who's playing tonight? Oh, this guy. Okay, let's break in. And so promoters would stop having concerts because they had to pay more for the broken windows and burned out things than
revolutionary.
Yeah. And a lot grew up on the misunderstanding that in America a lot of bands were playing for free, which is true. Like that you had like Jefferson Airplane and
San
the guy,
Francisco.
but they were playing for free because the manager was paying to organize these things.
Right.
The bands were making money.
It was good publicity.
Right, it was publicity, and still people believe that in America these bands are so far out. They never touch any money. They just on the road every time they play and eat sandwiches and sleep on the street. They don't realize because we can't forget that progressive music is very expensive to deal with, to perform, to write. You have to buy every instrument that comes out, every guitar, every drum kit, and your live show is going to be so difficult. You have to hire a lot of roadies to work with. It's not just playing rock and roll where you just go on the vibes and create and loud. If you think, most of the progressive bands, they have like a mellotron, which is so delicate an instrument, and a lot of bands had to stop dealing with it because it breaks down every night. It's very complicated.
You also mentioned when we were speaking earlier that there's no musicians union in Italy, and there's no places for anybody to rent equipment.
Right.
That seemes very interesting.
Somehow people believe that Italy is a land of music, land of
there's so many
singing,
bands.
okay? Mm-hmm. But this is not true. Music is not important. In fact, there's no union, and there's no. If you want to play a big concert, you want to rent some kind of equipment, but good equipment. I mean, not lousy PA. Good equipment, you can't. They don't have it.
So you have to own everything.
You have to buy everything you're using. And since you're buying most of the stuff from England or from America, you should have English and American people to work with it. And it builds up a lot of confusion, a lot of problems. I remember touring England with PFM on Sunday. Like we had problems with one of the guitars broke down, the neck, which was broken, and another problem we called on Sundays, and there was a place open to come and fix it. In Italy on Sundays, no one will. You should cancel your gig for that night. There's not really there's not an organization to follow this type of music. Like, I feel this type of music was born in England and America, so you have the structures to go with it. In Italy, we all imported everything, and no one is ready for it. There are no places where you can hear good music. There are either sports hall or old cinemas or discotheques.
Isn't there any opera houses or anything?
Opera houses, they don't give it to you.
Yeah, you can't use the opera house.
Exactly. Right. Because they don't want things to be broken. And
Yeah, PFM tried to get into La Scala Theater,
Yeah.
because La Scala is half owned by the government, is run by the government. So they say if people pay taxes to get that theater, anybody should be able to use it, any artist. They have the best lighting system, computerized, okay? Why should only opera use it? Why not the new music? But no way to get into that.
Because of its history of
Right.
violence, the people who go there and vandalize.
Right, but also because they think that it's going to spoil the whole thing. And it's like, like beautiful flower that you can't touch.
or else the petals will fall off.
Right.
Gosh.
Well, it's amazing because a lot of Americans, they take it for granted. Young people in Los Angeles especially, a lot of people in the Boffomundo audience, I'm sure, they find it really tough. The odds are against them to try to get signed by a company, and they find it hard to get gigs, but they don't appreciate the fact of how easy it is here compared to the odds that you had to overcome in Italy.
Right.
The forces of politics, the young people who ruined the rock scene because of their violence, they took advantage of the situation and broke windows and so on and so forth. So I think they should appreciate the fact that, you really had to overcome odds a lot stronger than just... not being able to make a lot of money. You couldn't make any money. It was very, very difficult.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How did the group stay together so long? How did PFM survive? Well, it was your tours out of Italy? Or?
PFM survived, PFM is still together,
Bravo.
Because they took lessons from these English bands I was telling you about, their organization, the way to behave, the way to invest money. Like most bands have a salary, and they go on salary until they make it. They don't divide. Like, we play tonight. How much we make? 2 million lira. Okay, let's divide. No, everybody would have a salary, and so they would invest. So for when an album is not doing too good, they still have energy to run on. And other bands just survived because they just wanted to. They thought they were going to do it. They thought the world was going to change. And all of a sudden, disco came out. And
did the progressive musicians did they change to the disco style of music, or did they just stop playing? They kind of quit, and a whole new breed of musicians.
Yeah, the disco scene is all new musicians. There aren't very many.
Are they good musicians, or is it just sort of crummy like it is here?
Well, it's
Clive, if you're watching,
I think the crummy is not a powerful enough word.
Disco. When you hear disco, you don't care who's playing it. You don't want to know. So I'm not familiar. I know that Peter Jacques band are people from Bologna, but I wouldn't know their names. I don't even know how they look like, and I don't care.
There are there's quite a few Italian bands that, as far as were great influences on me, and I wonder if you could tell us a little bit for the audience if these bands are still around. Because, for instance, Arti and Mystery. Yeah,
Arti and Mystery, they had a change in the lineup, but the original member, who's the drummer, Furio Chirico, is still together. They are working on a new album, but it didn't come out yet. Probably the record company has some problems.
They're the band, speaking of which, that plays the theme of the Boffomundo show.
Yeah, our musical theme is a little piece from that album.
I'll tell him when I see him.
All right, do it. What about Il Baricentro?
Il Baricentro, I think they're still together, but I never seen them performing. I never heard them playing a live gig. And I know they had one of the songs was on TV as opening for some kind of a show.
Really?
Yeah.
What about Goblin?
Goblin, I don't think they are anymore together. Some of the members went in other bands, and I wouldn't know exactly.
How about Chorus Leorme still around?
Yeah, Leorme, they are trying to have a comeback. They stopped for 2 years, and they got into very acoustic music.
Right.
They started violin and cello.
Yeah.
And
that's the band that left, kind of went into hiding and practiced more primitive.
Yeah, they have a
forms or
new
something?
album, Florian. I've heard it.
Right.
It's very good. Very excellent. I'd like to know a little bit as to how you joined PFM and a little bit about the American tour that you did here that we saw that was one of the finest things we ever saw around this part of the country.
I met PFM in 1971. They were very popular in Italy, but they didn't have an album out yet. They were playing, tunes by other progressive bands. And one night I was playing with a band called The Immortals, and we were opening. So we got together and we wanted to know what to do to get into the scene, into the recording scene. So they told us to change a few of the guys of the band, and so we started into it. In fact, the first 2 albums by Acqua Fragile, which is the band I went on forming right away, were co-produced by PFM. Then in 1974, they asked me to join the band. And by the time the Mass Media Stars album by Acqua Fragile just came out, and I really believed in that, and I really was strong for it. So I said, I want to think about it because I'm really involved in my band. And so they said, okay, don't bother, we're going to try to get somebody else. And so they did, but after 6 months they were not happy with this guy, and so they called me. Acqua Fragile was no more because we didn't have any work. The albums, they just pressed 600 copies. So they called me. I remember going to Milan and say, we are going to ask you again to join the band. I said, well, I'm here. But I'm worried because I know you are going to in the studio in a week. And I said, well, no problem. Let's go home and rehearsal.
All right.
That's how it started.
Great. You have now embarked on a solo career.
Right.
You left PFM, and you've just finished your first album.
That's
In fact, with some magic hands, you never
From
know
Mercury.
what's going to come in
Ladies
my
and gentlemen.
hand right as we speak. What the camera can I get this on? This one over here. This is Bernardo's new album. It's called KO.
Like the design?
Which means knockout.
Knockout. Right. And there's another picture of the glove in the back, and there's all sorts of interesting pictures and photographs, thingamabobs inside.
What kind of music is it?
Yeah.
Is it progressive like your work in PFM?
No, it's not. Maybe one tune sounds a bit progressive, but mostly I'm working on songs and very close to rock. To rock, there's a lot of vocal, naturally, because I like to sing.
You're a wonderful singer.
So
one of the best.
So do you say that you've been influenced by some American style music?
Yeah, I've been always influenced by American music because I started over here in 1965 when I was on a scholarship in Texas. I got into music, and probably I got into progressive music because I needed to learn. To learn, so that was the good music to get into. Probably was the music of the 70s in Italy, and I was in Italy, so that's how I got into it. But like with Acqua Fragile, before working on our original songs, we would work out maybe Gentle Giant stuff and then Crosby, Stills and Nash, which is weird somehow, but to us, the harmonies that those guys would put out was progressive. Very mellow, very much feeling. But to study the way they were doing the harmonies, we would learn a lot.
Were you playing music when you were on your scholarship in Texas? Were you a musician back then?
No, actually, I came with the guitar, but I couldn't play it. I was staying in a family where this guy was a musician, had a little band, a combo.
A combo.
And now he's working in Nashville,
Right.
We keep in touch on the phone and with letters. So I got into music and started. And when I went back to Italy, started playing with bands, singing, playing the guitar.
Now, I understand you're here in the States because you're thinking of re-recording the album. All the lyrics are in Italian. This is an Italian-produced album. You're thinking of reproducing it, recutting it here in the States.
Right. One of the things that I learned with PFM is that all different markets, how they move and how to relate to them. In Italy, if you come out with an English album, you don't sell. Like Jet Lag was very bad for PFM in Italy. In America, you can't come out with an Italian album. Nobody's going to play it. You know.
Oh.
Well, I know.
Okay. I will.
I know, but no one is going to release it in Italy. All imported. So, but the approach to the music is different because I can't just translate the words and doing the same thing. It's like a complete new experience. Now, with the group, this is very difficult because there's 5 or 6 people that have to work on 2 different albums each year or every 10 months, plus 2 different type of tours, okay? And this takes a great amount of energy and time. While I'm doing all myself, I got all here, and I can do it real fast. Besides, I love to sing in English, and I've been always working with Italian producers. And so I had to do a lot on my own. I would like to meet somebody who can teach me something by this time, you know.
Are you going to be recording it in Los Angeles, in New York, and Nashville? You mentioned you have...
Okay, no, I don't think it's going to be in Nashville, either Los Angeles or New York. I'm trying to work out a situation, and I can't tell exactly now what's happening.
Well, we'll be anticipating the album, for sure.
Well,
we look forward to seeing you again. If you do come back to Los Angeles, do drop us a line. We'll have you back on the show. We'll find out the progress of the band. We're just about out of time now, folks. I'd like to say hi to Mike and Susie and Larry
Ward,
and Sharon and
Peter
Ron and Peter and all the guys.
All of our friends.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the swim party. And
hey, the steaks were bad.
Well,
take them back.
Well, anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks with another incredible guest.
Ciao.
Ciao, everybody.
Mr. Lanzetti. And from the Boffomundo boys, we'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks. Thanks a lot for watching us tonight.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Like for the zone?
Like for the zone?